Most of the people have some sort of a home or apartment to go back to at the end of the day. However, a few people choose to live a very different life, a nomadic life, not because of scarcity of resources, so they need to go from place to place, but for a mere curiosity, freedom, and detachment of various possessions. Hello, I am Valentina Cirasola, author, designer, and lover of colors. Welcome to my new episode, Create Beauty Every Day. Today, my guest is an author who decided to live a nomadic life. Her name is Jackie Lambert. I hope I pronounced it well, and she will tell us all about her life. Let's put her on.
Hello.
Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you, Valentina. How lovely to meet you here in cyberspace.
Yes, I have the same pleasure. Thank you. Where are you now? I know you are wandering and trotting the world. Where
Yes.
exactly are you now?
I'm actually in Montenegro, up in the mountains in the Balkans. So it's kind of in between Albania, Kosovo, and Macedonia, North Macedonia, just above Greece. So yes, I'm doing an extended tour in this part of the world.
You can see the Adriatic Sea.
From where I am, I'm up in the mountains, but yes, we've certainly been playing around on the Adriatic, and we came from Bari in Italy, which I think is somewhere that you're rather familiar with yourself.
I was born there, so it's my favorite sea.
Yes, no, that's right. We crossed over from Bari to Durrës in Albania, so yes, I waved hello to it as we came through.
Very nice. So, please tell us the reason you chose to live a nomadic life.
Well, I've always loved travel. Throughout my life, I always tried to incorporate as much travel as possible in between periods of working. And I suppose even my work became rather travel orientated because I was a salesperson. So I used to travel for work. I worked for an American company. So I often came over to Silver Spring in Maryland, or they had an office in Oregon. So I used to travel a lot with work. And I think I've always just been a restless person who likes to try different things and know about different cultures. In my younger days, I used to do long haul travel. So I visited places like Ecuador in South America. I went over to Asia and did a rafting trip in Nepal. So I've just always been very curious about travel. And in fact, when I met my husband in 1999, we always had a house rule that once we were sort of finishing one holiday, we had to have another trip booked. It was just the most important thing in our lives. So when it came down to it, we were both made redundant in 2016. We had always planned to travel. It had always been very much on our radar, but we'd expected to be working for rather a few more years. But we have a saying in our household that there's always a solution. And we accidentally, with our redundancy money, bought a caravan, what you might call a trailer in your part of the world. We'd never owned one before, but we got rather excited and celebrated with a bottle of champagne. And by the end of the evening, we'd come up with a rather bizarre plan of, well, if we live in the caravan and go touring, we can rent out the house and we won't need to work again. But obviously we sobered up the following morning, looked at it again and thought, actually, that's a really good idea. So in fact, that's how we started our nomadic lifestyle. Initially, we intended to do it for 3 years, but obviously, as I say, we gave up work in 2016. It's now 2022. So we're 7 years into our 3-year trip, and we have absolutely no intention of stopping soon. And you might be able to see behind me, just on the wall there, a picture of our truck. In 2020, we decided that we wanted to go further afield. We've been touring Europe for the last few years. So we've explored France, beautiful Italy, which is one of our spiritual homes. We've been to Romania, Slovenia, Hungary, various countries around Europe. But we decided we wanted to do a longer trip and go to Mongolia. So we figured that the trailer might not make it across the Gobi Desert. So we bought something a little more substantial. So now we're basically touring in a 26-ton former army truck that we converted during the coronavirus lockdown. So that's what we call home now. So yes, that's how the transition.
Exciting. It's super exciting.
Yes.
But see, a nomadic life may seem heaven for some of us.
Yes.
I'm adventurous, but not that adventurous, because obviously I'm used to many comfort that probably I could get rid of it. But I think that besides the excitement of a nomadic life, there is also some bitter moments and unrewarding moments. How do you deal with the most common necessity, like taking a shower, bathing, or having water, electricity, internet, washing clothes? How do you do all of that?
Well, as I say, there's always a solution, but we're very much geared up. I mean, I remember caravanning as a child, giving away my age a bit here, but in the 1960s, we had absolutely no luxuries in the caravan. Whereas the caravan we started touring in, it had a microwave, which I didn't even have a microwave in my house. So we had a microwave, an oven, we had a shower on board. Sorry, there's a bit of noise going on in the background there. I hope it's not too disturbing. But we have all the facilities we need on board. It's a little bit easier now that we're traveling in the truck because weight isn't an issue. It's a 26-ton truck and we actually have 600 litres of water on board. So what we do is periodically sort of stop at a campsite, or in fact in the Balkans there's an awful lot, because people live rather differently here, and there's an awful lot of springs and taps where you can actually fill up your water. So those sorts of necessities aren't really that difficult. I mean, obviously with the truck, if we want to do laundry or shopping, we need to find somewhere with a very big car park, because we're 10 meters long, 2.5 meters wide and 4 meters tall. But I haven't actually found anything particularly difficult, in terms of internet, that's a little bit more difficult, but we just use an internet hotspot on our mobile phone. So we buy a SIM card in the country we're in at the moment. We've obviously got a Montenegrin SIM, and I think we got something like 500 gigabytes of data for about €15. So I'm not quite sure what that would equate to in dollars, but maybe, I don't know, $10. Yes, something like that. So it's not bad. And in fact, in Albania, for the same price, we had an unlimited data SIM. So, and surprisingly, some of these countries, I mean, for example, Romania is actually very proud of its 4G network. So no matter where we went in Romania, we had 4G internet. It was the same in Albania. It's a little bit more tricky here in Montenegro, because we are up in the mountains. We're in a gorge, so we've got high peaks on either side of us. So I was a little bit worried that we might struggle, but it seems absolutely fine, which is brilliant. So as I say, to be honest,
go ahead.
No, I was just saying, to be honest, the necessities, I think when people are considering a nomadic life, perhaps the thought of it and the difficulties that it might pose, thinking about them is actually worse than the reality. To be honest, it's been a lot easier than I anticipated, even in such a big vehicle. So yeah, it hasn't really been quite so much of an issue as
an adventure, right?
Yeah.
So you go from country to country. And imagine they all would need visa, passport, or at least permission to enter the country. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think in the West we are often very privileged, and we don't always think about how privileged we are as a British passport holder or a European or US passport holder. Those are actually some of the most powerful passports in the world, and Britons can travel visa free to an awful lot of countries in the world. Obviously, now that we've had Brexit, that's a little bit more difficult, because the 26 countries that are in the Schengen visa-free area, we used to be able to travel unlimited in all of those. We used to be able to work or be educated in all of those. Whereas
now
now
you have to have a passport, right? Or visas.
yeah, now we can only spend 90 days in a rolling 180-day period in all of the Schengen countries, not just one country. So we have to do what we call the Schengen Shuffle, which is what we're doing at the moment. We used our 90 days driving down here to the Balkans in France and Italy. And then we crossed into Albania, which isn't in Schengen. So now our clock starts again. But we can't actually drive back through Europe. We can't drive home to the UK until we're permitted to re-enter the country. So it is something that you have to be a little bit aware of. And we also travel with 4 dogs. I've not got them in with me at the moment in case they bark and interrupt us. But the requirements for traveling with dogs is also a little bit difficult. You know, some countries you have to have certain vaccinations or certain pieces of paper for them to be able to come. I mean, from Albania, actually getting into Albania is no problem, but getting back from Albania into the European Union is an issue. So we have to be very on the ball with what the requirements are. But yeah, we're pretty. I mean, it's something that you just kind of have to do without thinking, and we're very much spreadsheet people. So we have a spreadsheet with the requirements for all the countries in the world, and obviously there's useful information online, so we just kind of keep abreast of it as best we can.
So for having this kind of life, you have to be organized with all the rules and regulations.
For sure. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I think people think, like people who live a nomadic life are a bit free and easy, but there is actually a lot of work involved in, sort of making things run smoothly. Because you can get in an awful lot of trouble. I mean, even if you overstay in Schengen, maybe for a day or a couple of days, you can get quite severe penalties for that. And you can have your passport stamped as an illegal alien, which can make it a problem to get into other countries that are not even in the European Union. So it is something you do need to take seriously, for sure.
So in your nomadic life, change is your home, because you're here and there and everywhere. So the change is your home. But do you have a place that you call home, which is usually what people consider where their friends and families are located? So do you have a place you call home?
Kind of yes and kind of no. I mean, I think I've been a very restless person all my life. I mean, I was born in the north of England, which is not the most prosperous part of the country. And at the age of sort of 17, I went to university, and then I've never lived back at home. My parents still live there, but I've never lived back at home in the north of England. Very much against my will, I moved to London because that's where the jobs were. But then, of course, you build a life. It was another thing that I thought I might do for 3 years. And you build a life, and then you stay there. For the same reason that I moved away, many of my school friends moved away. So when I go back, although some of my family is there, I don't really feel a strong connection, because although the place is home, the place is familiar, it's kind of not familiar because very few people that I know actually remain there. So I don't feel a strong connection there. I'd say my adopted home is Bournemouth on the south coast of England, which is where I moved to really to get more out of life in terms of windsurfing, which is one of my passions. I moved down to Bournemouth, and it's just an absolutely beautiful area on the Jurassic coast of England. England next to the sea. So now obviously I've built a life there. I have friends there and I love the place. If I ever do settle down in one place, then that would probably be where it would be. But yeah, I've as I say, I've been a very restless person. I've lived all around the United Kingdom. When I met my husband Mark in 1999, I'd moved house 22 times, and I'd lived in sort of Lancashire, Yorkshire, every part of London, down in the south coast. I'd lived in Wales. So I think change is something that I actually quite like in my life. I think I get bored if things remain too stable. So yeah, I think sometimes it's good just to throw your cards in the air and see what happens.
So I gather from just what you said that it wasn't hard for you to give up everything, family, friends, even material possessions, right? It wasn't so hard.
Not really, no. I must admit, material possessions and money have never meant a lot to me. I mean, I have been very lucky in my life. I had good jobs and I've always had enough. So I think, money is something that if you don't have enough, then it is a real problem. But it's not been something that's ever troubled me. And to be honest, regarding material things, I mean, there isn't one thing that I could think of in the world that I could possess that would make me any happier than I am. I don't feel, certainly for myself, I don't feel that the pleasure is in owning things. To me, it's in experience. So becoming a nomad didn't really hurt very much. I mean, it was difficult for me. I mean, I love my books. So getting rid of my physical books was probably one of the hardest things. And then perhaps vinyl records, because they were the soundtrack of my youth. And even though I didn't have anything to play them on anymore, still all the covers and the smell of the covers and I remember buying all of them and saving my pocket money to get them. So they were kind of sentimental in that sense. But then having said that, if I just want the music, I can stream that now. I don't need to own a record or a CD. It's something. And likewise with the books, most things you can get on a Kindle. So I didn't really find it difficult to shed possessions. And coupled with that, I actually really rather like not owning very much. I've found it very liberating and freeing, because when we actually went through and sort of downsized and got rid of all our possessions, I mean, it was embarrassing how much stuff we had. I mean, I felt it was obscene that we had all this stuff and, that we didn't even want, didn't know we had, forgotten we'd had, and just had to get rid of, I mean, I think, yeah, it's been a cleansing experience, I would say, to actually get rid of everything. So, yes.
I forgot to put the comments on, but I'm having a comment. I have now put the button on Facebook, right? Because we are live, but we're going directly on Facebook because that's what this platform does. So maybe we'll see some comments coming in. Your husband turned, as you said, an old army truck into a living arrangement. That's your home. I will show it a short video. Okay, so stay tuned. Don't go away. Oh, is it working?
I can see the video, yes.
You can see the video, huh?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so you're on again.
Lovely. Nice to be back.
So is that place comfortable for you? Is because it looks very compact,
To be
very
honest, sorry. Yeah.
so what how does it feel like? Does it feel like a home? Like
Oh, it does to me. I absolutely love it. I mean, to be honest, bearing in mind that some nomads live in vans. I mean,
yes.
we're actually in the manor house of motorhomes because, as I said, the box on the back of our truck is about 7 or 8 meters long. I mean, my husband is 6'6". He's 2 meters tall, and he can stand up in it. We've got a super king size bed. So actually it's very, very comfortable. And I rather like a small space. I mean, even when we were working, we downsized from a 3-bedroom house to a 1-bedroom apartment. Because in my view, I can't imagine ever sort of getting to the end of my life and going, do you know what? I really wish I'd done more housework. And one of the things I loved about the apartment was the fact that I could plug in my vacuum cleaner, my Hoover in one room, and then Hoover the whole flat. And it took me about 1 hour to do my entire housework. So, I mean, I actually really love compact living. I mean, I realize it's not for everybody. And, you have to sort of, sorry, I've got a dog. I'm just going to remove the dog.
Don't worry.
That was bound to happen at some point, wasn't it, with 4 dogs? But I actually really enjoy compact living. As I say, I feel cleansed with having fewer possessions. I rather like the make, do and mend sort of attitude that we have, because while traveling, you can't always replace things. So you become, much less prone to consumerism. So, yeah, I must admit there's never really been a moment where I've sort of felt that I didn't like it. We've got everything we need. We've got a shower on board. We've got cooking facilities. We've got a comfy sofa. As I say, a very comfortable bed. So actually I don't really, in fact, no, that's wrong. I can't say that there's nothing that I miss. The only thing I miss is a bath. I used to really love having a long hot bath with a book and just sitting there for hours. So that's the only thing that I haven't got that I could possibly say that I would miss. But other than that, yes, space is not a problem. And then, of course, traveling in lovely warm countries. I mean, we've had beautiful temperatures today. It's been about 30 degrees. So you can actually spend an awful lot of your time outside. I mean, it's still lovely now. It's the evening now. It's about 7 o'clock in the evening. And it's still warm enough to sit outside and have a barbecue, have a drink. So, yeah, it's really not something that's ever bothered me or troubled me.
Yeah, that sounds like you really like it. You're really enjoying it. Wow.
Very much so. Yes, very much so.
So basically, you never seek a different accommodation just to try out a different place. Like a hostel,
No.
like a hotel, or short rental. You don't really seek.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we. Yeah. I wouldn't say we seek that. I mean, one thing I would qualify it is that we do love to ski. So in the winter, what we often do is rent an apartment to ski in a ski resort, just simply because the idea of 4 soggy dogs and 2 wet human beings in winter would be a little bit miserable. It's often very difficult to get things to dry in a truck or a trailer or caravan. So just from a practical point of view, I mean, people ask us whether we'd be warm enough in the winter, and yes, absolutely. This is very cozy. We've sort of stayed in the snow in our truck, and we've never been cold for one moment, because again, it's a very small space, so it actually heats up in about 10 minutes if we put the heating on. It's really well insulated. But yeah, just from the point of view of getting damp ski gear wet, then we do rent an apartment. But while we're traveling, I can't say that I miss anything. We've never really felt the need to stay in a hotel, or, I mean, some people do. I know that they do. And I don't know, maybe I could be persuaded if I found one with a bath. Maybe I would be persuaded then. But in general, I'm happy in the space I'm in.
So when you go from country to country, do you feel you have to learn different languages because you are put in contact with different culture, different lifestyles, and different languages as well? So You just basically go around with your English, or you do know other languages, or maybe you learn that on the spot.
We always do try to learn languages. I mean, it is a terrible foible of British people that, you know, because English is so widely spoken, I have to say, really, because of the USA rather than Little England, many people watch Hollywood movies, and we even met a chap in Albania who'd learned English from watching movies. He was amazing. But I always feel that it's at least polite to learn please and thank you, and probably beer in a foreign language. But I did learn French at school, and I do speak French reasonably well. And then because we have had a very long love affair with Italy, it's one of our spiritual homes, and we've spent several winters there in a ski resort. I have learned Italian, which I found quite easy to learn, knowing French, because the grammar is very similar. Some of the words are very similar. So I didn't find that too difficult to learn. I've also, we toured Germany a few years ago, and I did German in 3 months. I got a book and did German in 3 months. So I got to the point where I could hold a very, very simple conversation in German, which did prove very handy, because it's very easy to think. I mean, I assumed that everyone in Germany would speak English, but actually that's not so. And particularly with the kind of traveling that we like to do, where we get off the beaten path a little bit, you'll find even in France or Italy that people don't speak English, and it is actually very, very helpful to have other languages. But the other day we passed through Kosovo to get to Montenegro, and in fact in Kosovo, I mean, other than Albanian, one of the common languages was German. So I managed to have a conversation with a gentleman there in German. So you do find that the languages come in, and likewise in Albania, Italian, because of the closeness with it being just across the water. Italian again is quite widely spoken in Albania. And I also found in Romania, I could read Romanian because it's based on Italian, although I couldn't pronounce it. I couldn't actually speak it. But yes, I do like to learn languages, and I'm interested in languages. I think often to understand a culture, you need to understand the language, because there are words and phrases that don't exist in your own language, that you can't really begin to understand, you know, sort of if you don't speak the language. Things like hygge in Danish, we don't have a word for that, but that's kind of a lovely coziness that you have with friends if you're having a lovely time with candles and, you know, just a cozy evening. So
it is helpful to at least speak a few words of their language. Yes, absolutely.
Sure. And it gets you a long way. I mean, I think it's only polite if you visit somebody's country to at least try, you know, I mean, and I find that people do appreciate it, even if you pronounce it horribly. And, you know, I think they do appreciate that at least you try.
Yeah. So your staying is basically determined by your visa, by the time that you can spend in certain country, not by you, right? It's not because you want to establish some kind of friendship with locals or some small routine, and it's because the visa determines how long you can stay, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Although with some of the countries, for example, in the Balkans, we can, as British people, spend 3 months in Romania without a visa. So, I mean, it is easier to stay in some countries than others. So you can stay for some time. And to be honest, one of the reasons that I've always loved travel, particularly like this, is that in a 2-week holiday, you can't really understand a culture or get to know a place or, you know, sort of find out anything about the people. So, I mean, one of the reasons that I wanted to travel full time was to stop living life in thin slices, just in 2 weeks from work, and actually spend a little time where you could begin to understand different places and enjoy the food and, you know, maybe chat to people. I mean, it's still difficult sometimes to sort of really get under the skin of somewhere and really kind of properly understand, because you are just passing through. We're not working here or anything like that. We are still kind of tourists, albeit we're a little bit longer term. But, that is one of the reasons that I wanted to travel like this, just to understand really and appreciate different cultures and different ways of approaching life.
Right. So a nomad generally spends a lot of time alone. And what do you feel? Do you ever feel loneliness, or do you have, maybe you don't feel homesick because you already told me that you don't have much attachment to your homes in England, but do you ever feel alone? Or
I wouldn't say I felt alone. I mean, now traveling, it's so much easier than it ever was to keep in touch with people. I mean, you have Zoom, you've got email, we can phone home, I can telephone, you've got WhatsApp. I mean, there are just so many ways of keeping in touch. I mean, years ago when I backpacked around Australia, it cost hundreds of pounds more or less to phone home, so you didn't really do it. It was a few pounds a minute, and you had to do it from a telephone box because mobile phones didn't exist in those days. And to write, I had to do post restante, so I had to tell people where I thought I was going to be in a couple of weeks, and they would send a letter to a post office and hope that it arrived at about the same time as I did or before, so that I could pick it up. But now it is so much easier to keep in touch with people, so I don't really feel lonely in that sense, because I can keep in touch with family and friends. So that isn't really a problem. And then you do meet an awful lot of people traveling. We've met so many lovely people. And in fact, we have kept in touch with quite a lot of people. For example, we toured Poland in 2020 and went and visited a lady that we met skiing in Italy, in Wrocław. So, it is, sort of not completely isolated. It is, oh bless you, yeah, no, it is quite a sociable sort of means of traveling. But then obviously it does involve an awful lot of goodbyes. I mean, we met up with some other truckers the other day, and we had a lovely time with them. But then I think they've gone off there in Bosnia now, and we're sort of heading a different way. So I mean, there are a lot of goodbyes. It does involve a lot of transience and goodbyes, even though you can still keep in touch with the folks at home and with your friends. But I think you can get travel fatigue as well. I mean, sometimes, we had it a couple of days ago in Kosovo, where we just both looked at each other, Mark and I, my husband and I, looked at each other and said, what I wouldn't give just to have like a month back in England, where everything works as you imagine, where, sort of everything's predictable and you're not sort of constantly trying to work out where you're going to stay and what you're going to do. So I mean, you do get that. I mean, thankfully it was very short-lived, and sort of 24 hours later we were absolutely fine again. But yes, it does happen.
Yeah. Well, actually, you have to, in your situation, you have to like your company, because as I said, if you don't like your own company, you are in bad company. And so
I couldn't agree more. I do think that's, like very important. And I think it's important to love yourself and, to be happy in your own company and happy in your own skin. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more with that.
So in a nomad life, basically, I think a nomad doesn't take life too serious. And because you move around and you change friends, you change location. Everything is temporary, right? Nothing is yours in this life. Only you accumulate memories and experiences, right? And that's it. And then after you experiences all of this, what you going to do? Are you going to make a TV show, write a book, or I'm not sure, but accumulating, sometimes, The people who don't live like you, they accumulate things so they can show it to others. But your memories and your experience are inside of you.
Hmm.
And then what happens to all of that?
Well, it's something I would say, I mean, we mentioned before that I don't have very many possessions, but one of the possessions that I do have that I would never part with are my travel diaries from my trips when I went backpacking and so on and so forth. And those memories are just so precious. And those diaries, I think photographs are one thing, but something written, I mean, it's like a portal back to the 30-year-old me, and I would never, ever get rid of those diaries because it's just such a precious snapshot of my life and what made me who I am. So, yeah, I mean, as I said, I've already said that, to me, experience is very much more important than owning things.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's different. And I mean, it really does depend on what makes you happy. If having a nice car and a nice house and the latest television is what makes you happy, I mean, I haven't got a problem with that. I mean, that's absolutely fine. But as I said at the beginning, there's nothing I could own that would make me any happier. So I don't really see the point of just accumulating loads of stuff, because in some ways I feel it weighs you down. I can't remember who it was who said, if you own something and you can't let it go, then you don't own it. It owns you. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really have a problem. And as regards taking life seriously, I do wonder whether nomads, if anything, take life a little more seriously, perhaps than people who live a conventional life, because this is not an easy option, to actually go against the flow of conventional life and go against the flow of what people expect of you, to settle down, get a job, sort of have your 2 weeks holiday a year. It's actually quite difficult, and sometimes you do meet resistance. So, yeah, I mean, I tend to think that there's nothing really frivolous about wanting to live your dream. And, I think that's actually quite a serious take on life, to sort of go, okay, I'm going to just like step away from the treadmill and do my own thing. Yeah, because it really isn't always the easy option. So,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. So you are an author. Have you?
Yes.
I'm sure you have written about all your travels, because I've seen your books.
Yes.
Tell me about your books.
Well, I've written 4 books. Here's the first one. They're all in the Adventure Caravanning with Dogs series, which is exactly what it says on the tin. So my books are basically about our travels. When we first started traveling, I used to do Facebook posts with little comments, and friends of mine said, oh, we really enjoy sort of reading all your little comments and seeing your photos, because, I'm quite self-deprecating. I mean, when we bought the caravan, as I say, we'd never owned one before, so we did everything wrong. We had all kinds of mini disasters and what have you. So people enjoyed my Facebook posts, and then one of my friends said, oh, you should start a blog. So I started a blog, and that kind of became successful. And then, yeah, sort of one of my blog fans said, you should write a book. And I was like, I can't possibly write a book. But in the end, I decided that I would give it a try. So now I've written 5 books about our travels. And what I hope they are is just both entertaining and informative. I mean, they're the sort of thing that I love to read. I love to read funny memoirs. I love to read, about travel. I think it's part of the curiosity that makes me travel, is that I love to find out about other people's lives. So memoir is certainly one of my favorite genres to read. But yeah, basically it's just, sort of a sort of distillation of like things that happen on our travels, but also how we did it, because we're not millionaires. We haven't won the lottery. We've not had a huge, sort of windfall from a relative who's left us money as an inheritance. We're basically, I mean, the first book, the subtitle of it is From Wage Slaves to Living the Dream. And that's exactly what we did. We retired early. We retired at 50 and became nomads, because that enabled us to have the life that we wanted and that we'd always dreamed of. So what I love the most about the books is when people drop me a comment or a review and say, oh, you've inspired me to, you know, do the same thing, or you've inspired me to take a long trip or step off the treadmill or think about living my life differently. You know, I just feel my work is done if that's the effect that the books have. But, you know, if not, then I hope that they're, you know, sort of armchair travel, that people enjoy visiting the places that we visit and have a laugh at our expense when we get things horribly wrong, which we do frequently.
Yes, it is certainly an inspiration to live the way you do. And I'm sure a few people will take the courage to do the same, just finding the right,
Yes.
you know, the right path. But you have never crossed oceans, right? Like you've never come this way to America.
Not while we've been overlanding. I mean, as I say, you know, we have visited America on holiday. I used to visit because of my work. I mean, personally, because I love travel so much, I have visited 6 of the 7 continents. But now, because we have 4 dogs who travel with us, you know, we do tend to stick to overland. But it's not out of the question that we might suddenly decide one day to pop the truck on a ship and come across the pond, as they say, and I shall come and visit you if we ever do. But yes, at the moment we're kind of happy touring Europe. There's so much to see, and there's so much diversity over here. I mean, our plans to go to Mongolia are a little bit on hold at the moment with the political situation sort of in the Ukraine and the sad events that are happening over there. But yeah, it's not out of the question that we might head west, as it were.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to see you with your big truck onto the ship, because I think that's the only way you can do it, to put the truck on the ship and come to America. Oh, that will be fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think we are getting to a closing. I'm going to ask you just one more thing. What is your idea of creating beauty every day? Because this show is about creating beauty every day. And for a reason, because I don't want to talk about political or social issue on my channels, because there are plenty people who do that, and I don't want to be one of the millions. I just want to show people that life can be creative, it can be beautiful every day, no matter what. And I want to be inspirational to others. And so my guests have to talk about beauty, and certainly you have, because your life as a nomad, it's beautiful. It's very attractive. It has interest. It has everything that most people would want. And so seeing countries, live freely, learning languages, what a joy. So that's what my goal is to lead people into thinking beauty, into thinking that life, whatever it is, it's beautiful and it's worth living in. So what is your idea of creating beauty every day?
Oh, Valentina, that's such a lovely thing that you do, and you definitely bring beauty into to people's lives. You know, colour and beauty. It's been such a pleasure to meet you. And my idea of beauty, I mean, it is very much my lifestyle. I mean, the reason that I sort of created this lifestyle for myself was so that I could live the life that I wanted, that I could have beauty and wonder every day. I mean, if you could look out of the window, I'll probably make you all ill if I twist the camera around, but I'm looking out on beautiful mountains with a sunset, you know, softening over limestone mountains. And that's my idea of beauty every day. I travel with my husband, who who is my soulmate and my best friend. I mean, you couldn't do this life if you didn't get on with the person that you travel with, because we're in each other's company 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, through difficulties, stressful moments, crossing borders. So I mean, that is something that's very beautiful. And my house is filled with love. I've got my 4 little dogs, and they're just so affectionate and loving and so much fun. So I have beauty inside my house. You may have noticed that I love colour. My my truck is very much coloured, as the colour scheme is an explosion in a paint factory. So, we've got happy colours that bring me joy. And that to me is what creating beauty every day is. It's living a dream, living the life you want to, having love, being surrounded by love. And I don't think you could want for more than that.
Exactly. Absolutely. You said it perfectly. And so we will talk about your books. They are on Amazon, right?
They are indeed, yes. They're all available either as paperbacks or as ebooks on right. Amazon.
Okay. So with that thought of beauty every day, we will close the show. And I thank you for being here very much. It was a pleasure. And we will see you again for another episode of Create Beauty Every Day next week on Tuesday with a different guest. Thank you so much, Jackie, for being here. Thank you.
It's been my absolute pleasure. And thank you very much, Valentina.
My pleasure. Don't go away after the show. So, my friends, peace and love as usual. Mwah. Bye.
Bye-bye.